Shalom and welcome to the One Pasuk podcast, in which three rabbis from Englewood, New Jersey, each share an insight on one particular pasuk from the Parsha and reflect on each other's ideas. Rabbinic banter, I like to call it. I am Chaim Pupko of Congregation Avat Torah, and I'm joined by my dear friends and colleagues, Rabbi Akiva Block of Kilat Kesher and Rabbi Daniel Goldberg of Eitz Chaim, the Englewood Shtibel. All right, let's get things rolling. All right, our one pasuk for this Shabbos, for Parshas Chayei Sarah. V'Avraham zakein ba bayamim v'Hashem berach es Avraham bakol. Avraham was advanced in age, ba bayamim, coming on days, or whatever that means, and Hashem blessed Avraham with everything. This comes right after Avraham buries his wife Sarah, and it is clearly an introductory lead-in pasuk to the next story of finding a wife for Yitzchak. But let's see what the rabbis have to say about this one pasuk.
So Avraham is really the first person, at least explicitly, described in the Torah as being old. Avraham and Sarah together are described as Avraham and Sarah zakenim ba'im bayamim earlier on in the Torah, but that's in the context of Sarah not being able to conceive a child. Here Avraham is really substantively described as the first who's described as being an old man. And Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, in his inimitable style, he loves to focus on etymology and the origins of words. And Rav Hirsch notes that the opposite of the word zakein is the word na'ar in the Torah. Mi na'ar va'ad zakein. We had that phrase in the Torah as well already. And Rav Hirsch says that the words zakein and na'ar are not just opposites in terms of age, but they actually are opposites in terms of their origin, in terms of their meaning. He says that the word zakein is an outgrowth of the root samech chaf nun, sochein, which has different conjugations, but the word sochein means like an attendant, basically a person who absorbs. The sochnut is absorption, and actually it comes up in this week's Haftorah. Avishag HaShunamit is described as Vatihilo l'sochenet. She is the sochenet of David. She's the person who basically tends to his needs and sensitive to him and trying to make him feel better. Sakana, which means danger, a person who's sensitive to their surroundings. Zakein, the etymology of the word zakein, is a reference to somebody who absorbs everything, a person who takes in their surroundings. Literally, ba bayamim, Avraham comes to his advanced age having absorbed, having taken in all that he has been exposed to, and actually has become a better person as a result. Zikna is not just a number, it's not just an age, but it's actually a sense of maturity, a willingness to be able to absorb and learn from everything around you. The word na'ar comes from the word, Rav Hirsch says, lina'er, which means to shake off. Imagine someone comes in with a wet coat, takes off the wet coat and starts mina'eret habeged, shakes off the clothing so that the water falls off. A na'ar is somebody who everything they encounter just rolls right off them. They shake it off because they're unwilling, maybe even unable, to absorb that which they're taught, that which they're exposed to, that which they experience, because they feel in this kind of self-absorbed way that they have everything they need and there's nothing around in the world that they need to learn that can teach them something. Avraham zakein ba bayamim is actually a reference to not just Avraham's advanced age, but his willingness to absorb and to take in and to learn from everything around him. And in the spirit of being B'nai and Benot Avraham Avinu, Avraham is the first zakein in the Torah, and we as B'nai and Benot Avraham need to understand and appreciate and learn what it means to learn from everything that we encounter. Avraham was exposed to many bad actors throughout his life, but ba bayamim, he was willing to learn and absorb and gain from all that he saw.
It's such an amazing idea. First of all, the fact that self-absorbed, like it works, that word works perfectly with what you're saying. And I really think it's one of the greatest challenges of our generation, right? We are exposed to so much information. People can learn about so many different opinions and cultures, and yet the way technology has affected us, people are more closed off. And what it means, real maturity, is to be able to listen even if you're very skeptical, but to be able to just listen to someone without feeling like your own ideas are being threatened, that's real maturity, 100%.
And lahalacha, we also follow this. It fits so beautifully. The Gemara in Kiddushin says, "Nipnei seba takum hadarta pnei zaken," that a zaken in this pasuk is not exclusively someone who is old in years, but rather zikna is a tamid chacham. It references wisdom, and so the idea that that zikna is not an age, but it's a state of being. It's a mode of being in the world, a mode of taking in information. Fits so beautifully with that Gemara.
It's beautiful. Rav Hirsch actually, in the second paragraph, contrasts the word zaken with the word yashan. Yashan really does mean like depleted energy, which the derivation of that is shena, which means sleep.
Yes.
But zaken, like you're saying, Rabbi Goldberg, exactly. It's not at least primarily a reference to age. It's a reference to wisdom and life experience and everything that we associate with what it means to be advanced.
Which is why I've always dyed my beard gray, because I wanted to come across as zaken.
The next word in the pasuk, or the next words in the pasuk, are ba bayomim, having arrived in days, which is a kind of curious turn of phrase, which I think our best kind of superficial translation would just be a synonym for zaken. So what do we make of that? The Kli Yakar says something so beautiful and so profound, and really resonates, I'd say dovetails really nicely with what Rabbi Block was just discussing. He says that in life, a person will have a period of daytime, of light, which is the positive and good part of their life that they enjoy. And then there's a period of darkness, a period of challenge and struggle. And he says for people who live a life that is superficial, and it's about the satisfaction of their physical desires, and those types of people, the daytime is their youth, right? They peak in high school when they were the captains of their varsity hockey team, or they peak in college when they're having all sorts of fun. And then forever they look back at those days with nostalgia, and the rest of their life is kind of a letdown. And if you're very tied into how you look, so inevitably you don't look like you're 20 when you're 50 and 60. And your life is, you go from the daytime until the night. That's how you live out the rest of your years. But if your life is a life of the spirit, and if your life is the life of the mind, then your dark years are when you're young, when you're trying to figure out the world. And as you age, you are bayamim, you enter into the days, right? The golden years, the golden years of your life are the later years of your life. And that's what it's describing here, that Abram did all of this work and grew so much, and his old age, it was od yunavun b'seva, right? Those were the great years of his life, because those were the years when he understood the most, and he was probably the most detached from the Yetzer Hara and from the physical desires of this world, and he was in the most beautiful chapter of his life, which is something to aspire to.
Yeah,
all of us.
Yeah, which I think is such a beautiful idea about Avram, because Avram is the innovator, right? Avram is the one who introduces the belief in God to the world, and he's active and he's running around, and so you would think here Sarah dies and Avram's now wrapping up his career. You would think the Torah would just transition him out, but no. What the Torah is saying here with Baba Yamim and how you explained it so beautifully is that Avram was feisty his entire life, and he was active and he was engaged and he was passionate throughout, and that's what defines him.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
The story, this well-known story that's told about Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. I think it's Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. He was on a plane next to some world-renowned scientist, and Rav Yaakov's children were coming back constantly, and the scientist said something along the lines of, "I can't believe how much your children respect you. The more I've gotten older, the less I've heard from my children and grandchildren." And Rav Yaakov basically explained to him that a Jewish value is to honor and respect and venerate our elders, because we're one generation closer to Har Sinai. We're not old and senile and useless. We actually, a person's vitality is really a function of their mind and their wisdom and their life experience. So I think the concept of Baba Yamin really dovetails beautifully.
Yeah, I think that the way I heard it retold was, to me, to my grandchildren, I'm one step closer to Har Sinai, but to your grandchildren, you're one step closer to the apes.
I heard it that way too. I just wanted to tell it in a little bit of a cleaner way.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like our audience likes that kind of spicy. Yeah, it's just.
So you heard it.
Plus a clickbait right here. The title, the soundbite that we're going to put out into the world will be.
Yeah, so listen. You heard it with the lashon of apes. I heard it with the lashon of monkeys. Your ones are monkeys, so maybe that's even more crass.
I tried to elevate it a little bit for our audience.
It actually segues to what I was thinking about in this pasuk. I was looking at this pasuk just generally, not just the language, and how the Torah introduces what seems to be like the only missing piece in Avraham's mission by saying that Hashem had blessed him with everything. Like to me, it's a little bit of a contrast. Right here, the pasuk says Avram had everything, and then goes on to tell the story about him needing to find that one thing that he didn't have, a wife for Yitzchak. And so an observation I wanted to make based on this is that what the Torah is hinting at is an idea that when we reach milestones or when we're trying to advance within our lives, so sometimes we tell ourselves, like, I just need this in order to be complete. If I just had this, then I'd have everything. And I think what the Torah is hinting at here is that it's just the opposite. To achieve certain very fundamental things in our lives, we have to have a very strong sense of self and who we are. I think of parents who are going through the aggravation of marrying off a child, and if it's taking longer than they expected or it's not happening the way they expected, it's very aggravating, very anxiety-inducing. And there's a feeling that we need this so that we can establish our next generation, and then our legacy will be complete or something to that effect. But really, it's just the opposite. To arrive at those moments in a healthy way, we have to arrive at them with a strong sense of self and who we are, and that we're defined on our own by who we are and what our values. And it's when we have a healthy sense of self and a strong sense of our values and what we're looking for in a partner or in a new job or in anything, that's when we're able to take that next step. Not when we view it as something that needs to complete us, but no, we feel a certain sense of completeness, and it's out of that completeness that then we can then tackle the next challenge and achieve the next goal.
It's really terrific. And I would actually add, it's not only the case with what comes next, but it's the case with what came immediately prior to this description of Avram of having everything. Avram, who is described throughout these parshios as being a very rich man, apparently has not one piece of land. He has no real estate, apparently, to bury his wife. And how could a very rich man have no real estate?
Right.
He has nothing. And yet he has to come and beg Ephron Achiti to purchase this plot of land in order to bury. He has not one cubit of space to bury Sarah.
Yeah.
But our notion of wealth, maybe what the Torah is trying to teach us, is our notion of wealth may not necessarily be what the Torah describes. Abraham, maybe his own self-perception was he had everything. And this foreshadows, of course, the contrast between Yaakov and Esav, Yesh li kol and Yesh li rav.
Right.
What it means to have everything is not to have everything, hasamech bechelko, to refer back to the same Mishnah, Rabbi Pupko, that you referred to before. Berachas Avraham Bakol really teaches us about what it means. And in order to achieve that next, I love it, in order to achieve that next stage, you really have to have a sense of self-worth and a perception of what your own values are.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, shkoyach.
Shkoyach.
Shkoyach, everyone.